Hi everybody, my name is Brian Roberts, and in this video I'm gonna basically just film myself changing the strings on this Taylor acoustic guitar. A couple things. I decided to start using this particular guitar for my acoustic guitar lessons, and I put a set of elixirs on it, and I can't remember the last time I did it. But regardless of which, there's a couple things going on here. For one, you can probably see all the gunk from all the playing. So those are my dirty fingers playing a lot on this guitar. And so I'm going to clean that up when I change the strings. The most important thing though that's happening is it's not playing in tune. So I can tune the strings all I want. So this is saying a B now, right? Now if I go up to the 12th fret, it's kind of flat. Not a whole lot. Now let's hear the E string. Okay, E is in tune. That's pretty noticeable. And so when a string isn't able to stay in tune, it could mean one of two things. Maybe the intonation needs to be adjusted, but oftentimes if the guitar has already been set up, if it's doing this kind of a thing, not holding its tune, it usually means the strings are just too old. So without further ado, I will just be talking out loud as I change the strings on this particular guitar. And if you happen to have acoustic guitar that you want to restring, you can kind of just follow along with what I'm doing and change the strings with me. Okay, so got the clippers and the winding tool. But you don't need the winding tool, and I like using it. So some people just straight up snap the strings. Sometimes I do that. Today I feel like unwinding them a little bit. That way it's not so violent when the string gets cut. Alright, so now those are removed. I mean, they're loosened. These little pins are kind of hard to get out sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and clip the strings. And there's a tool called a pin remover, but if you don't have it, you can actually reach inside and push up on the pin as you pull it out. So they come out really easily like that. That's one thing that I do if I'm having trouble. So you have to get that pin out. And pushing up on the pin and pulling it. And if that's giving you too much trouble, some pliers will work too if you don't have that special tool. Okay, so now I got some pliers, and I'm just gonna gently squeeze. Don't squeeze hard, just gently. So yep, comes right out. So lightly, yep, it comes right out. And I'm putting the pins back just because I don't want to lose them. Should probably turn on more lights. Do that after this. Go. And again, don't squeeze too hard with the pliers. The priority is pulling it up, not squeezing. Okay. So those are removed. Let there be light. Okay. And now I'll get it removed over on this side too. Which I guess I can flip it around so that you guys can see a little bit better. I never do it this way, so it's like awkward for me to do it like this, but I'll manage. So uncoil, pull it out, make a little pile. So I'm just unwinding it. Now this is the one thing as a guitarist that you should be able to do, is change your strings on your instrument. Other things like intonation and setup and truss rod adjustments, those are nice if you can do it, but I don't hold that against anybody if they can't do it. Alrighty, so we're gonna clean up the neck, and you don't need to have fret oil, but here we have fretboard conditioner oil, whatever. Hydrate your fingerboard. So just follow the directions, whatever the directions say. Let it hang out for a little bit. This is a time I usually kind of wipe areas that are difficult to wipe. So much gunk on this guitar. Yep, and then I think you're supposed to buff it out. And then that's done. I like to use a credit card to get the gunk kind of off. I'll try to see if you can get a close-up on it. Okay, so kind of where my ring finger is, there's a lot of gunk, even where my pinky is. So I'm going to take this and just kind of work my way back and forth, and you start seeing how it's getting removed. Yeah, so I just do that back and forth. I don't dig in, I don't want to damage the fretboard, I just want to get the gunk off. So I'm just kind of moving back and forth to get that gunk off. Loosen it up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that for all the frets, or rather the spaces between frets. Just loosening up the gunk. Yeah, pretty therapeutic. It's a good time to listen to music. So I have some video game music on a playlist in the background on my tablet. I don't feel like editing this video down, so it's just going to be a straight single shot. I've been trying to record instances of myself changing the different types of guitar strings and guitars. But yeah, this is your typical steel string acoustic guitar, modern. Yep. And a lot of times acoustic guitars have really thick strings, but I've been getting into the habit of putting really thin strings on my acoustics for whatever reason. I think it doesn't sound as good, but it's certainly easier to play. Okay, so I think the credit card kind of pulled some of it off, so then I'll come back with a rag and kind of buff it out, see what else I can remove. But yeah, lots of finger gunk there. So then you might have to spend a little bit more time, a little more elbow grease on certain areas. So this is just removing what I can without any risk of really damaging the guitar, using the credit card trick. Okay, now this is optional, but I have a dental cleaning tool, if you can see. Yeah, and I'm probably going to be using that side. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try my best not to kind of dig into the fretboard at all, but I'm going to get to those metal frets, and I'm going to try and like scrape, kind of like a dental hygienist. I am going to be trying to scrape the plaque off the teeth and not the gums. So right there, that's some pretty big gunk right there. Because you will scratch your fingerboard if this this pick or whatever it's called digs into the wood, and it's not going to ruin your instrument, but you want to avoid that if you can. So this is just getting the gunk out of the little crevice, and hopefully you can kind of see all that, but it's an extreme close-up kind of thing. So I typically pull the pick towards me very lightly, just get that gunk out. It's kind of gross. Like, these are just all your finger oils and sweat accumulating. And another funny thing is you'll really see where you play a whole lot, wherever there's finger gunk. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all the various frets. And again, I'm not really keeping track too much. I'm just trying to loosen up the gunk. You've got the gunk. You've got the gunk. And, you know, you don't have to remove the gunk. It's not really going to ruin your guitar. It's just oil. But every little bit contributes. So if you have gunk, that gunk absorbs sound, and a good instrument typically reflects sound. So cleaning the gunk off is going to make your guitar sound brighter and louder, in my opinion. So I just kind of make this my standard operating procedure whenever I change strings. Give it a nice little cleaning. Again, just like going to the dentist. They floss you, they scrape the plaque out. You don't have to do it every night. Maybe once a year, once every 6 months. Whenever you change your strings, really. So I try to put off string changing for as long as possible. But in this instance, the guitar wasn't staying in tune, and it's the number one thing about playing music is you want to be in tune. So if your instrument's not doing that very important job, its main job, which is playing a pitch in tune, you gotta address it. So yeah, pretty boring stuff. I mean, we're not even changing strings yet. And you should be able to see where there's buildup. So right here, there's still some buildup. A little bit more over here. Yep. And then I'll knock everything loose and with my little rag there. And depending on how psycho you want to get about it, you can go back with the credit card and continue scraping things out. So to whatever level, if you want this thing looking like showroom condition, yeah, you can sit there and really work everything out. You can sit there with the rag and just kind of see if you can rub everything out, or maybe rub it in a way. But I don't like to obsess over this kind of stuff. Every now and then I'll take this to the real guitar store and they'll do all that stuff and make it look brand new. I'd rather be playing the instrument, not cleaning it. Okay, one other thing I'm going to do is a very reckless way of polishing the frets. I use a very fine grit steel wool, and I'll just kind of go over the top here very lightly. I'm not trying to sand the guitar. I'm really just trying to get the frets to get polished. And this will release a lot of fine particles of steel wool. You might want to wear a mask, but I can already see just that little runaround has made those frets much more brilliant. You know, almost like the Statue of Liberty. It used to be bronze, now it's green. So there's some oxidizing on these steel frets. Should see like a little green residue. So I'm just trying to scrape that off. But again, not violently. They actually make special like fret protector things that you put over the fret and then you can go to town. But I don't care enough about it to do that or get that tool. I'm covering the sound hole just because I don't want the steel wool to get in there. And even the steel wool will kind of help get rid of that excess gunk that you weren't able to scrape off initially. Always go with the grain, people, which is this direction. And you might want to wear your COVID mask for this. But a little bit of whatever doesn't hurt anybody. Okay, good enough for me. Yeah, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll read them. And that will influence, I'll either respond to you in the YouTube chat or I will make a separate video. Consider it, at least. Okay. So there's some gunk up here. I don't really care. Alright, let's get to the string changing. Now, if I do it this way, it's going to confuse me, so I have to do it this way. I've always changed strings going from this angle. So that's how I'm going to do it. Alright, I'm actually going to wash my hands and make sure they're dry before I touch the strings, because I want my corrosion to be I don't want to put any corroding elements onto these new strings. So wash my hands, and they don't need to be like bone dry, but just not sopping wet. So totally get your hands dry and then bust out those new strings. I typically do the low E string first, but you can do whatever thing you like. There may be a correct way, I don't know. Just make sure that you put them in the right spot. So oftentimes I'll lay them out in an order so I don't confuse myself. So I know that's the thinnest and that's the thickest. So I'm going to start with the thickest and just work my way down from there. Okay, so they come coiled. Uncoil them and stick the ball end into the hole there and shove it down like a musket ball. Bam. Make sure it's in there snug. Take it over, and then if you have this kind of headstock where the you have 3 on one side or whatever, feed it from the inside like that. Don't feed it from the outside like that. And now my blocking, that's a bad thing. You want the string to come through and feed it, and you want it to spin around from the inside, which would be like that. Okay? So I guess I have to do it like this. Dang. Maybe I'll get better at doing it like this. We'll see. Okay. So in we go. And it's important to give yourself some slack, but not too much, okay? And then, so that's all the way taut, so maybe like that. This is the hardest part, I think, knowing like how much slack to put. So I'll kind of coil it under itself, pull it tight, and then fold it over itself so that it kind of stays put when I start cranking. So this is what I'm saying, I gotta do it this way, because I'm so used to doing it this way. This should work. So what I do here is, and I've given it way too much slack, I think. Yeah, that's too much slack. So not to worry. I can feed a little bit more in. Yep, and then do the same process underneath. So it's under and folded. So it's certainly not the end of the world if you have too much, because you can just adjust it like how I did. But if you do too little, then that's going to be a problem, which I think I've just revealed that I still need more. I need to feed a little bit more in. So how about that? That should be much better. So yeah, I don't really have a system for this. I just kind of eyeball it and kind of feel it out. So I think that's gonna be more than enough. I think it's actually too much, but I'm just gonna go ahead and start cranking. So I'm making sure that there's tension on the string as I crank it, so that it coils correctly. And in fact, sometimes I'll bring my finger and put it all the way down at the bottom of the tuning peg, the winding area, so that it ensures that the string feeds from the bottom. Then once it starts getting tight, you can let go. And I leave these on until I'm absolutely finished, because you never know, you might have to undo something. So I'll show you what I did on the next string. Okay, so next string is 42 for this particular set. Feed it, stick it in there, pull. Okay. So same thing. Feed it through the tuning peg. Thread the needle, as they say, and then give yourself some slack. That should be good. So I bring the string underneath and then fold it over the top. Okay, so I'll show you what I do when I'm coiling it. Oh, this works pretty well, actually. So I'm pulling up with these fingers and I'm pushing down with the pointer finger. Ah, I forgot to put nut sauce. So nut lubricant. Not necessary, but I like to do this whenever I'm changing strings, is lube the nut. So that means I gotta put some on this string too. Okay, so I'm pulling up with these strings and I'm pushing down, and I try to come all the way to the bottom part of the tuning peg to ensure that when I start cranking that the string is feeding from the bottom. So it'll essentially tighten in on of itself. So I'm keeping tension there. You can see it's tight, right? It's not loose. I'm not pulling it to death, but I'm keeping it taut. So twisting and pulling. If you have one of these things, makes the job a lot faster. And we're bam. If it stays on. Okay, close enough. All right, next string. Rinse and repeat. So again, into the bridge. Feed it into the tuning peg. And underneath itself. Let's make sure we have the right amount of slack. I think that's good. hold, twist over the top, and now crank. So this one, I don't think I gave it enough slack, but it's not the end of the world. I kind of want to make sure that I have at least like 2 spins on it. This will do, but could have been better. Should have had more slack on it. That's okay. So the thinner strings need more slack compared to the thicker strings. So as you put on the thinner strings, just be mindful that you have to kind of increase the amount of slack. Okay, so now it's going to be kind of the opposite direction. I have to make sure that the string feeds from the inside relative to where it's at. Okay, so I'm making sure that the string is coming in from this direction, like this, rather than from the outside direction. Not the end of the world if you do it this way, but try not to do that. So feeding it from the inside. And I'm not going to repeat the same mistake. I'm going to put ample slack this time. Now I have had some students in the past that have like been paranoid about like the strings snapping on them. And if that's the case, if you are worried about that, I have one word for you. Eyeglasses. So these are just fake eyeglasses, but it'll block anything coming into your eye if you think it's going to snap. Okay, next string. It's the first non-wound string. Feeding it into the bridge. So I will need more slack for this one. Feeding it from the inside, not from the outside. So feeding from the inside. Make sure there's a lot of slack for these wire ones. Should be good. Folding in out of itself. Bam. And then cranking. Again, I'm making sure that the string is feeding lower than the previous coil. It's a very important part of all of this. This looks like it's getting a little stuck on the bottom there, but that's okay. It'll eventually slide up. Yep. It's gonna slide up. So this is what I'm talking about right here. If you can see. kind of hard to see. Anyway, it's really coiled. It's stuck on the bottom of the peg, but it'll fix itself. Okay, next thing. 11s, last string, so again feeding it from the inside. Because this is the thinnest string, I'm going to give it the most amount of slack. And here we go, cranking. Okay, all the strings are on. Now we got to make sure it's in tune. So I slap the tuner on. This should be pretty normal. I usually pick at this point because I don't want to put my grimy fingers on the fresh new strings. E. D. G. I feel like I need to help it along. Yep, there we go. Yeah, so I'll help this guy along. Just kind of forcing the string up. And so now you can hear and see, I don't know if you can see the tuner, E spot on and E spot on. When before that was the string that was kind of out of tune. So that's the main reason why I changed the strings, and as we can see, the problem is fixed. Other than cleaning up, the only other thing to do is, if you don't like having the Medusa snake hairs flying about, you can take a wire clipper and clip. If you don't have a wire clipper, you can do this other strategy, which is you can just kind of keep wiggling the string, and eventually it will break. So I'm just bending the string kind of back and forth, and it'll eventually break. Yep. So that's if you don't have a wire clipper. but I recommend clipping it with the wire because you might accidentally undo everything, which has happened to me a time or two. So I like to clip it with a little bit of excess on the edge. That little excess though could cut you if it ever pokes you, and it will eat up your gig bags because that little pokey thing, that little wire sticking out. Ouch. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see it, but anyway, so that's the pitfall for clipping, but that's how I prefer to do it nowadays. Leave a little excess so the string can bite it, but as a result it will cut things up. Maybe that one will be easier to see. Yeah, see that thing sticking out? That's really sharp actually, and so it will poke your hand if you're up there messing around, you know, like maybe grabbing the tuner or the capo, or if it's in a gig bag, it'll chew up that gig bag. There we go. I'd like to say she's good as new, but it's not. But it's better than before. So another tune real quick, because even doing that will sometimes throw it out of tune. Plus the strings are stretching. And then the other thing I like to do is I like to stretch the strings. So I'll take a microfiber cloth that's going to live with this set of strings. I really like the D'Addario Planet Waves microfiber cloth. They come in a this. So the reason why I like to use a cloth is because now I'm not touching the string and I can kind of move it around. So I'll kind of wipe it off real quick, wiggle it a little bit, but not too much. I don't want to break the string, but I want it to start settling in. And just by doing that, it'll be out of tune. There we go. All right, all finished.